The promise in the ruins. The air was thick with smoke. Buildings lay in broken pieces. Fire crackled through the ruins of what once had been a peaceful alien village. Corin, a young human soldier, stepped over a shattered wall, blaster in hand, eyes sharp. His boots crunched against glass and ash. His squad had moved on ahead, clearing the zone. He was alone, checking for survivors or bodies. The war between humans and the alien coalition had turned brutal over the past year. Villages were hit no matter how small. No one was safe, not even children. That's when he heard it. A small cough, then a sob. Corin stopped. He turned toward the sound and moved carefully through the rubble. Behind a collapsed roof, under a burned support beam, he saw her, a little alien girl, no older than 6 or 7. Her skin was pale purple with tiny glowing lines like vines curling around her arms. Her large silver eyes were full of fear and dust. Her clothes were torn and her hair hung in wild knots. When she saw him, she tried to run, but her foot was stuck under a piece of metal. She winced, fell back, and held up a stone, ready to throw it. Hey, Corin said gently, lowering his weapon. I'm not going to hurt you. She didn't understand his words, but his voice was soft. His hands open. I'm human, yeah, but I'm not your enemy. She stared at him, breathing hard. Her hand slowly lowered the stone. Corin took a step closer and knelt. You're alone, aren't you? She looked down and gave the smallest nod. What's your name? Silence. He pointed to himself. Corin, then gently tapped her chest. You? She hesitated, then whispered Jara. Corin smiled. That's a pretty name. She didn't smile back. Corin reached into his pack and pulled out a food ration. Carefully, he unwrapped it and placed it in front of her. She stared at it, unsure, but hunger won. She took it and began eating fast. He waited until she was done, then asked, Family? She shook her head. His chest tightened. No child should be alone in a war zone. She looked so small in the rubble, so broken. And still she was trying to be strong, trying not to cry. He reached out slowly and wiped a smudge from her cheek. You're tough. I like that. She blinked up at him. I know this is hard, he said, not caring if she understood. I wish I could make the world better. Then he smiled and added, mostly to himself, You know what? When you grow up, I'll marry you. That way you'll never be alone again. She tilted her head. Marriage, he said, acting it out with his hands. 2 people stay together, protect each other. Always. Jara's eyes lit up a little. Marry? He nodded. Yeah, when you're older. She said something in her language, soft, hopeful. Then she held out her pinky finger. Corin chuckled. Pinky promise? That still means something out here? She kept holding it up. He linked his pinky with hers. I promise, he said. And in that moment something changed in her face. Like her fear faded. Like she believed it. He stayed with her until his squad came back. When they arrived, Jara hid behind him. She wouldn't speak to anyone else. Only him. They placed her on a refugee transport. She waved as the doors closed. Corin smiled. And then he forgot. Years passed. The war ended. Peace came. Corin left the army, became a trader, flew supply routes, through quiet systems. The promise he made in the ruins faded into the background of his memory. Just a joke. A silly, kind thing said to a scared little girl. Nothing more. Until the night the sky lit up. Corin was on a quiet space outpost near the Glisa Rim. The stars were calm, the station slow. Then the alarms blared. Unidentified ship entering orbit. Large signature, Royal class. Everyone ran to the windows. A sleek, dark vessel was descending, covered in silver marks and glowing shields. The kind of ship only ancient royal families used. The outpost guards scrambled. Weapons were aimed. Orders shouted, then the ramp opened, and a figure stepped out. She wore armor with glowing symbols. A long cloak flowed behind her. Her face was covered by a silver helmet. She walked through the crowd without fear, toward Corin. The helmet hissed, lifted, and her face was revealed. Silver eyes, pale purple skin, glowing vine marks. Her voice was calm but sharp. "You made a promise," she said. Corin's heart skipped. "You said you'd marry me when I grew up." She paused. "Well, I'm grown." The vow that became law. The station was silent. Every soldier, trader, and staff member stood frozen, staring at the alien woman who had just stepped off a royal-class ship and claimed a human man with 5 calm words. "You made me a promise." Corin didn't move. His heart was pounding, but his face stayed still. It couldn't be real. It had to be a mistake, but it wasn't. The girl from the ruins, the child with silver eyes and dust-covered skin, was now standing tall in warrior armor, her presence glowing like fire wrapped in ice. Jara. Grown. Strong. And apparently dead. Serious. She walked past the guards like they weren't there. They didn't stop her. They couldn't. Her ship's ID confirmed it. High House Jara Venkal, ruling bloodline of the Talari system. Royal blood. And Corin? He was a supply pilot with a dented ship and 2 overdue cargo runs. She stopped inches from him. "I kept the food wrapper," she said. "I buried it with the stone you gave me. I remembered your voice. I followed it for years." Corin swallowed. "Jara, that was just a joke. You were scared. I was just trying to comfort me," she said, tilting her head. "Yes, you did. And in my culture, promises made to save a soul become law." He blinked. "Wait, law?" She nodded. "Under Tahlari tradition, your vow, witnessed by the ashes of our dead, became a sacred soul bond. You claimed me, and I accepted." The outpost commander finally found his voice. "Miss, I don't think this—" Jara raised a hand. The commander went silent. Not by choice. Her tech had locked his vocal cords. "I am not here to debate," she said. "I am here to complete the vow." She turned back to Corin. "Unless you're breaking it?" The room felt colder. Corin took a breath. He had been through wars. He had faced slavers, pirates, and hunger. But this was something else. "I didn't mean it that way," he said slowly. "I didn't expect you to remember." She smiled sadly. "I remember everything. The smoke, the silence, your voice." Then her tone changed. "But it's more than tradition now. There are those on my world who want me gone. I'm inconvenient. If our bond is confirmed, they cannot touch me. If you reject it publicly, they'll have a reason to kill you," he finished. She nodded. "Yes, legally." He looked at her long and hard. "So this isn't just about love. It's about survival." Jara looked away. "It started with survival, but it grew into something else." An hour later, they sat alone in the station's private chamber. Guards had cleared the area. Jara's ship hovered just outside. The silence between them was heavy. Corin finally broke it. "You became someone powerful. You were the last person who treated me like I wasn't broken," she replied. "I built everything after that moment. I was just a scared soldier," he said, "and I was a child who needed a promise." He rubbed his face. "So, what happens now? I marry you and suddenly become royalty?" "No," she said. "You become protection, and possibly something more." Corin chuckled, dryly. "I don't even know how to hold a royal spoon." She smiled again, a little softer this time. "Then I'll teach you." The next morning, the council ship arrived. Aboard were members of the Talari High House, politicians, elders, watchers. They wanted to see the human who made a soul bond vow to the royal daughter and never returned. They weren't friendly. One spoke sharply. "You promised our heir like she was a toy. then vanished. What honor is in that? Corin stood calmly. I didn't know your laws. I didn't know what she was. But I made a promise, and I'm here now. Another elder narrowed her eyes. You would marry a royal under pressure? I would marry the girl I once protected, he said, even if she became a queen. Jara stood behind him, quiet but proud. That night, Jara approached him while he watched the stars from the docking platform. You handled them well, she said. He nodded. I've negotiated fuel deals with worse. She looked at him seriously. Do you regret it? Regret what? Making that promise. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, No, I regret forgetting it. I regret letting the memory. Jara's voice softened. Then will you keep it now? Corin looked at her. Really looked. Not at the armor, not at the power, but at the girl who had once been alone in a war-torn ruin who had waited all these years for someone to come back. He stepped forward and held out his pinky. I promised, didn't I? She smiled and linked her pinky with his. Hook, ending. But far across the galaxy, in the shadow halls of a rival bloodline, a red-eyed general snarled. The human agreed to the bond, he said. Then we move now. A dark figure beside him nodded. Kill them both before the wedding. End the bloodline before it begins. The enemies within the stars. The royal ship left the outpost quietly, but inside it was filled with tension. Jara sat in the command seat, her eyes locked on the stars ahead. She was calm outside, but Cade, now officially her soul-bonded partner, could see something deeper in her silence. Corin stood by the window, arms crossed. The ship was smooth, advanced, and twice as fast as any human cruiser he'd ever flown. But he couldn't enjoy the view. He had just promised to marry an alien royal, and now they were flying into a political storm. Where exactly are we going? Corin asked. Jara didn't look at him. To the High Court, to complete the bonding rites. The law must be seen. And if they reject me? They can't. The bond is sacred. He frowned. But they don't have to like it, do they? Jara turned her head slightly. No, they do not. Hours passed in quiet warp space. But then the ship's lights dimmed. A soft alarm echoed across the halls. Jara's voice sharpened. Status? The pilot replied. 2 unknown ships following, long-range cloaking, weapons warming. Corin stepped forward. They found us already? Jara stood up. They were waiting. A sudden blast rocked the ship. Sparks flew. Shields dropped by 20%. Enemy fire incoming. The pilot shouted. Jara didn't flinch. Activate evasive pattern. Get me visuals. The screen blinked, revealing 2 sleek black ships, slimmer than war cruisers but loaded with hidden weapons, painted in blood-red symbols. Corin leaned closer. Those markings. That's the Ashkai order, isn't it? Jara nodded slowly. Rival bloodline. They want me dead, and the bond erased. The attackers didn't wait. They fired again, and this time, a direct hit knocked out half the shield array. Corin grabbed a sidearm from the wall. If they board, I fight. Jara placed her hand on his. No, you fly. What? She pulled open a hidden panel. There's a dual seat, combat fighter in the lower bay. It's fast enough to draw them off. Take it. Corin frowned. You want me to leave you? I want you to live. He held her gaze. Not without you. Her eyes softened. Then fight beside me. Minutes later, they launched in the fighter. A silver dart bursting from the main ship's belly. Corin took the pilot seat. Jara handled weapons. The enemy ship saw them and broke formation. They're splitting, Corin shouted. Trying to trap us. Let them, Jara replied, charging the plasma cannons. Corin flew hard, between debris, through asteroid shadows, using every trick he learned during the war. Jara's shots were perfect. She hit one ship's wing, sending it spinning. But the second enemy wasn't fooled. It looped behind them and locked on. Alarms screamed. Corin gritted his teeth. Brace! A missile launched, fast, silent, tracking their heat. Jara turned to him. Trust me. She hit a glowing panel on her wrist. The air shimmered. Suddenly the fighter blinked out of sight, cloaked by ancient Talari tech. The missile flew past confused and exploded far away. Corin exhaled. I didn't even know this thing had a cloak, Jara smirked. It's royalty. We hide when we want. Together they returned fire and destroyed both ships. Burning wreckage scattered across the stars. When it was over, silence returned. But it didn't feel like peace. It felt like a warning. Back aboard the royal cruiser, Jara sat quietly in the medical bay. A burn ran along her arm from a blast hit, but she said nothing. Corin sat beside her. They were sent to kill you. She nodded. And me. She looked at him. Yes, they want the bond gone. The bloodline ended. You're human. You were never supposed to be part of our royal future. Corin leaned back. Maybe I'm not. Jara turned sharply. Don't say that. I'm not a prince, Jara. I'm not political. I can't read half the traditions. I just fly and shoot. She took his hand. You don't have to be royal, you just have to be real. That's what saved me. He stared at her, quiet, then asked, Did you ever really think I'd come back? Jara nodded once. Even when you grew up, became a soldier, became all this? Yes, she whispered. Because your voice never left my mind. They arrived at the Talari capital the next day, but the court was already in chaos. A high council elder met them on the platform. His face was pale. You must come quickly. The bonding hall has been challenged. Jara stiffened. By who? By the House of Ashkai. They filed a challenge under ancient combat law. Corin frowned. Challenge for what? The elder's voice shook. For your right to marry her. Hook. Ending. Jara turned to Corin and said quietly, You have to fight. Corin's mouth went dry. Fight who? Her voice was calm, but her eyes were full of fear. For him, the strongest warrior of their bloodline. In front of the entire empire. The challenge for her hand. The arena was carved into the side of a mountain, ancient, sacred, and brutal. Tahlari warriors stood in rings, their glowing armor casting light on stone walls covered in battle marks from centuries past. Above them, nobles watched from high platforms wrapped in robes, their faces hidden by ceremonial veils. Corin stood alone on the stone floor, unarmed, dressed in light armor given to him only minutes ago. He stared at the giant gate in front of him. Behind it waited the challenger. Jara stood at the platform, her hand gripping the cold railing. Her eyes stayed locked on Corin. You don't have to do this, she had told him earlier. But he had answered calmly. They came to kill. You. Now they want to humiliate me. I'd rather bleed than run. She hadn't argued after that. Talari culture was clear. Once a soul bond was challenged, the human had two choices, fight or forfeit the union forever. If he lost, she would lose her legal protection, and her enemies could tear her future apart. The gate groaned, chains rattled, and out stepped the challenger. A beast of a man, taller than Corin by 2 heads, his skin like black stone, his armor fused to his body from past battles. His name was Varnak, champion of the Ashkai bloodline. He had killed 5 mates in past challenges. This would be his 6th. The crowd went silent. Varnak raised his blade, an energy axe that hummed like thunder. Corin swallowed. He had no energy, weapon, just a steel staff. A bell rang. The match began. Varnak charged fast for his size. Corin barely rolled aside, the axe slicing the air an inch from his head. He got to his feet, keeping the staff between them. He didn't need to win by strength. He needed to survive. Outthink. Outlast. The first few minutes were deadly. Varnak slammed, the axe again and again cracking the stone. Corin ducked, rolled, blocked, but each hit sent painful shockwaves through his arms. He tried to jab the staff at Varnak's ribs. It bent like it hit steel. The crowd began to laugh. Jara did not. Corin backed away, breathing hard. His arm was cut. His ribs burned, but then he saw it. Varnak's left side was slower. The armor joint there was stiff. A weakness. Corin faked right, rolled left, and struck. A clean hit to the side. Varnak roared. Corin didn't stop. He struck again and again, forcing the brute backward. The crowd gasped. Nobles leaned forward. Then, Varnak caught the staff, broke it in half, and tossed it aside. He grabbed Corin by the throat and lifted him. Jara stood. "Enough!" she shouted, but no one moved. The rules were the rules. Corin struggled, kicking, choking, then reached for the dagger at Varnak's belt. One pull, one slash. Varnak dropped him, roaring in pain. Corin fell to his knees, coughing. Blood ran from his nose. His arms shook, but he stood. Still breathing, he growled. Varnak charged again, blind with rage. Corin stepped forward and used Varnak's own weight against him, spinning, driving the dagger into the cracked side armor. The blade sank deep. Varnak gasped, then dropped to the ground, unmoving. Silence. Then the elder raised both hands. The challenge is complete. The bond remains. Cheers filled the arena. Others stayed stunned. Jara ran down the steps. Corin was still on his knees, panting, bleeding. She dropped beside him. "You're hurt. You should see the other guy." She smiled through tears. "You didn't have to win," she whispered. "Only survive." "I wasn't going to give them even that much," he said. Later, in the healing chambers, Corin lay bandaged but awake. Jara sat beside him, silent. He turned his head. "You knew that if I fought him, I'd get hurt. Maybe worse." She nodded. "I also knew you would say yes anyway." He reached for her hand. "You're not a child anymore, Jara. You're a warrior, a leader." She looked at him. "I never wanted to be those things," she said quietly. "I wanted to be yours." He smiled faintly. "Then I guess we're both in this for real now." Hook ending. But far away, in a secret lab orbiting a dying star, a scientist watched the match recording. He whispered to his team, "Their bond is real, and now that they're joined, the genetic code will begin to unlock. Get ready. We move on the next phase." The bond that awakened power. The ceremony was quiet, beautiful, and ancient. Golden light lit the great crystal dome of the Talari Sky Temple. Floating orbs hummed above the gathering. Jara wore a long silver robe trimmed with glowing threads that moved like living light. Corin stood beside her in ceremonial armor, a gift from the High Council after surviving the combat challenge. They stood beneath a tree of crystal roots, its branches filled with memory stones of their ancestors. A priestess spoke in both languages. Soul to soul, flame to flame, memory joins with purpose. Then she placed a shard between their hands. It pulsed once, then twice. Then it shattered, softly, and released a beam of blue light that wrapped around Corin and Jara, connecting. Their hearts, the crowd watched in awe, but the reaction was stronger than expected. The floor beneath them trembled, the roots of the tree glowed white, and a hidden wall in the temple opened, sealed for thousands of years. Later, alone in the temple's inner chamber, the council gathered. One elder spoke, nervously. "No bond has ever triggered a temple reaction." Another whispered, "Unless." It recognized something in their genes. Jara stood tall. "You think it awakened because I bonded with a human?" A scholar stepped forward, scanning the stone patterns with a glowing staff. "No, not just a human. A match, a genetic key. Your union activated ancient code, as if the temple was waiting." Corin raised an eyebrow. "Wait, are you saying we opened a lock no one else could?" The elder looked directly at him. "Yes. And now we must understand what lies beyond." That door before others do. They stepped into the hidden chamber. Inside were machines, tall, round, humming faintly. Walls were filled with glowing text, written in the lost tongue of the first flame, the original rulers of the Tahlari worlds, long extinct. But when Jara approached, the machines activated, and when Corin touched one, it lit up completely. A soft voice echoed, "Genetic union verified. Hybrid protocol, initialized." Everyone froze. Jara whispered, "What does that mean?" The voice continued, "Ancient bloodline restored. Air class designation, unlocked. Future hybrid lineage, viable." Corin blinked. "Wait. Hybrid?" The machines began scanning. A sphere floated toward Jara and hovered near her chest. She took a shaky step back. "It's reading me." The priestess placed her hand on Jara's shoulder, her face pale. "It's not just reading you, my lady. It's confirming something inside you." Corin stared at her. Jara's hand slowly moved to her belly. I didn't. I know," she whispered. The voice spoke again. "Confirmed. Phase 1 embryo detected. Hybrid royal bloodline preserved. Species unification initiated." The silence was heavy. Jara stood frozen. Corin slowly stepped forward, his voice low. "We're having a child?" She turned to him, eyes wide. "I didn't think it was possible. I thought humans and Talari weren't compatible. Not like that." Corin chuckled softly, still stunned. "Apparently we're very compatible." One elder dropped to one knee. "This is more than news. This is destiny." Another added, "The hybrid child will inherit both bloods. It could unite systems, end the faction wars." Jara looked at Corin. "Or make us targets all over again." Outside the temple, spies had already sent the data. In the shadows of space, ships began to move. Not just slavers, not just enemies. Scientists, warlords, DNA traffickers. Everyone wanted a piece of the child now. That night, Corin sat on the temple roof with Jara. Stars glittered around them. "I always imagined this," she said quietly. "Standing under the stars, holding your hand. But not like this. Not with this much fear." He took her hand gently. "I'm scared too. But not of the baby. Not of you. I'm only scared of failing to protect you both." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "We may have awakened something the galaxy wasn't ready for." He looked up. "Then let's show them what it means to be ready." Hook ending. On a far-off moon, a dark laboratory hummed to life. Tubes filled with failed clones shattered. A hooded figure stepped out, whispering, "The royal hybrid exists. The new generation must be controlled. If they will not come willingly." His eyes glowed. "Then we'll take the child by force." The lovers at the edge of war. The quiet days didn't last long. After the bond awakened the ancient tech, after the temple confirmed the unborn child, everything changed. Jara was no longer just a royal. She was now the carrier of the galaxy's most powerful bloodline, and Corin was no longer just a man who made a promise. He was now the protector of the one life that every enemy wanted to erase. In the weeks that followed, spies were caught inside the capital. Encrypted messages were intercepted. Ships were spotted lurking just outside sensor range. They weren't fleets. They were worse. Harvest teams trained to steal high-value targets, without a trace. Jara's enemies didn't want war. They wanted silence. They wanted her gone. The High Council begged them to go into hiding, but Jara refused. "I've hidden my whole life," she said. "If I run now, they win." Corin stood beside her. "Then we take this fight somewhere they don't expect." "Where?" He gave a small smile. "To the ruins. Where it all began." They returned to the old war zone where Corin had first found her, when she was just a lost girl, with dust in her hair and fire in her eyes. Now the city was still broken but quiet. No one lived there anymore. No one watched, or so they thought. Jara stood in the same spot where she had once hidden behind rubble. She touched the wall where Corin had handed her food and said he'd marry her someday. She knelt, and there, half buried in the dirt, was a tiny stone, faded, burned, but still holding the scratched word Corin had carved years ago. Jara. She smiled and held it up. "I kept this," she whispered. Corin chuckled. "You really did remember everything." Then he stepped close, took her hand, and gently placed it on his chest. "I never forgot either." They kissed, truly. And this time, it wasn't a joke. It was real. That night they hid in the old outpost's bunker. Jara placed his hand on her stomach. "It's strong," she whispered. "I can feel its light." But Corin's face darkened. "We're being watched." "What?" He nodded toward the shadows. "I've felt it since we landed." A flicker moved through the hallway. Then a voice echoed, "We don't want you, we want the child." The walls exploded. Assassins in black armor poured into the bunker, fast, silent, perfect. Corin pushed Jara behind a wall and fired. He moved like he had in the war, sharp, ruthless, unafraid. Jara activated her arm guard and lit the air with blasts of golden plasma, but there were too many. Corin was tackled, slammed into a wall. Jara screamed, but they used sound dampeners. Her voice vanished in her own ears. One assassin reached for her. She fought like a wild flame, burning his armor, ripping off his mask. He was human, one of the royal scientists from the secret lab. "Your child is a blueprint," he hissed. "The future belongs to the ones who control it." Jara struck him down with a blast that turned the walls white. They regrouped in the control room. Corin bled from the side. Jara's breathing was rough, but they weren't broken. "I called for backup," Corin said. "From the rebel stars, people who still believe in free blood." Jara looked at him with new eyes. "You planned this?" He grinned, breathless. "I didn't fight in 3 wars to let them win with one ambush." A ship dropped from orbit. It was old, scratched, dented, but packed with fighters from all species. Humans, Talari, even old exiles who had once betrayed the royal family, now returned to defend what Jara and Corin represented. Freedom. The second battle was fire and fury. Corin fought with a plasma rifle, shielding Jara as she used her tech to overload enemy drones. Her unborn child pulsed with energy she could feel in her bones, guiding her, like the past reaching into the present. Everywhere she went, machines obeyed her. She wasn't just fighting for survival, she was leading. When the last ship fell, Jara stood on a rooftop covered in ash. She held the small stone again, the one Corin had carved with her name. "It's strange," she said. "What is?" "That something so small could carry so much hope." Corin wrapped his arm around her. "Waste. Just like you." Hook ending. Deep in the destroyed lab of the fallen scientists, one pod still glowed. Inside it, a half-grown clone stared forward, its eyes silver and human. A voice whispered, "They saved the child. But what happens when we grow our own?" The girl who became his forever. The war was over, not because every enemy had been defeated, but because every voice that mattered had finally chosen peace. The child growing inside Jara was more than a future heir. It was a symbol of unity, of possibility, of what could be born when love crossed boundaries that war had once painted in blood. And now Jara and Corin had a choice, not of escape, but of home. They left the royal cities behind. They declined the crown. They stepped away from thrones, councils, and political games. Instead, they chose a quiet moon, half green, half gold. A place with soft wind, no satellites, no soldiers, just peace. Corin built the house himself. Small, warm, a wide porch for stargazing, and thick walls that hummed with old tech passed down from Jara's bloodline. Jara walked barefoot on the grass each morning. She sang old Talari lullabies into the wind, and together they waited for the day their child would come. That day arrived with no warships in the sky, only rain, soft, gentle, clean. Jara cried when she held the baby for the first time. Corin couldn't speak. He just placed his hand over the small chest and felt the heartbeat, strong and steady. They named her Leora, which meant light reborn in the language of Jara's ancestors. She had her mother's silver eyes and her father's quiet smile. Years passed. Leora grew fast, both in body and mind. By the time she was 6, she could fix a Starlink transmitter and speak 4 languages. By 8, she asked Corin one night, "Is it true? You joked about marrying Mama when she was my age?" He smiled. "I did." "Why?" "Because she looked like she needed a reason to believe in the future." Leora nodded. "I think you were right." Then she asked, "Will someone say that to me one day?" Jara appeared in the doorway and smiled. "Only if you're very lucky," she said. Far away, the galaxy changed, not all at once, not loudly, but piece by piece. Treaties were signed, old rivals met, and in the center of every discussion someone would say, "Have you heard about the human and the alien girl?" They called it a legend, but it was real. Sometimes visitors came to the quiet moon, refugees, dreamers, peace seekers. Corin and Jara never turned them away. They didn't offer power or wealth, only kindness and truth. On the 10th anniversary of their bond, Corin carved a new stone. This one read, "Jara and Corin, forever started with a promise." He placed it next to the old one, worn, cracked, but still holding her name. Jara smiled as she laid a flower beside it. "This is where the war ended," she whispered. "No," Corin replied, wrapping his arm around her waist. "This is where you began." Final scene. Leora stood at the top of the hill, wind in her hair, her parents behind her. She looked up at the sky, so full of stars it looked like silver dust. Beside her stood a young alien boy, curious and kind. She turned to him and said with a playful grin, "When I grow up, I'll probably marry you." He blinked. "Really?" She linked her pinky with his and whispered, "Promise."